Hi everybody, Steve here. I wanted to do a little accompanying lesson to go over the Give It Time solo, Rick's great solo from the track. This is obviously the studio version they released earlier this year. Obviously amazing amount of music Goose have put out this year, and some great guitar stuff obviously. But I think this solo is really incredibly effective. I guess in part because of where it comes in the song, where you've gone from this very sort of quiet opening and the dynamics build, and obviously at this point the tempo ramps up a little bit to sort of 126 in that region, and then the song really opens up, and obviously Rick's solo comes in, so it's just a really great moment in the song, I think. The actual solo itself I think is really accessible. It's also it's predominantly conducted on the two highest strings, on the B and the high B and E strings. So if you're looking to develop this sort of lateral development of lines, this is a good solo to learn. It has some great phrasing in it, some great ideas. And so I think in that sense it's really accessible. It's, you know, if you're looking to get into this kind of style of playing, it's very lyrical, very melodic, and well worth learning. Before we get into the solo itself, I just want to say you can download a free PDF of my transcription of this from a website, so I'll include that in the link in the bio, but you can get it from www.stevecoops.com. There's also a little sound slice of this if you prefer to look at the video and look at the notation tab as you and learn it that way, and that's another way. But I thought I'd just spend a few minutes going through each phrase. It's only a 16-bar solo, but as I say, really effective. So let's get into it. I'm just going to switch camera so you can see what I'm doing with the fingers here. So I think it's probably worth, as with any solo, it's worth just kind of thinking a little bit about what's going on with the harmony. Essentially, it's not a great clean sound for chords, but essentially it's based on a three-chord vamp, which is in E flat major, but more specifically in E flat mixed Lydian. Since it uses the three chords, it uses chord 1, E flat. It uses chord 4, A flat, but it puts C in the bass, and then that C brings us up to D flat. So that's going from chord 1 to chord 4 to chord flat 7, like so. That is pretty much what happens in the entire solo. If you look on the music, you'll note I wrote a little G diminished chord in the early part of the solo where he plays this little kind of bluesy phrase. It's just in the guitar track you can hear a reference to the flat 5, which sounds, you know, quite harsh with this sound, but it is there. So you just get a little bit of movement. Though the keyboards, I think it's fair to say, just play a straight D flat there. So it's kind of buried, but there's a little something in the mix at that point. But for all intents and purposes, it's those four chords. So it's based on E flat mixed Lydian, and indeed, in terms of the solo, it's all based on the E flat mixed Lydian scale. So you're not playing any D naturals here. So we'll be using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and obviously that flat 7 is the D flat, and as you'll see as we go through, there's quite a lot of emphasis on that flat 7 note to bring out the Mixolydian sort of quality of it. Okay, let's get into it. The first phrase is this kind of long phrase that comes up the B string, starting with an opening slide. So there's lots of slides that come along the string lengths in this song, and I've roughly indicated where you might start them. Completely up to you, really, in reality, in terms of how far you want to kind of slide up. So it's sliding straight into this G, and then we go up a semitone. So now we're going to bend a full bend from the 9th fret. It's this one is just has a little mute at the beginning of it. So if you do the mute on the downstroke and pick on the upstroke, that's kind of a nice rhythmic thing. Okay, and then it keeps going up another tone. another tone bend there, that's B flat to C, then up to the C at the 13th fret. This is the half step bend, C to D flat, and then up to the D flat, and then it slides up another tone there, so D flat to E flat. You don't repick it, and then there's another full bend, E flat up to F. Again, it's quite slow, and comes back to the E flat at the end. So that opening phrase all the way up the string length. I tend to use my third finger. You can use whatever finger you want, I suppose, but it does seem to make sense to offer the support. Really lovely phrase. So phrase 2 introduces this idea of, really, it's based on this little pattern. So again, notice the emphasis on that D flat. But what Rick does, and he does this quite a lot, is just approach the sort of target note, if you like, from a semitone below in this case. So in the first instance, there's a slide from the G flat or F sharp up to G, and then the same thing from E natural to F. The E natural to F is a little slower, so it sounds a little bluesier. So I use my third finger for that, and then you can use your first finger to slide up there, like that. I think inexplicably on the playthrough I picked it, but I think it's probably better if you slide it. And then the last part of that phrase, fairly straightforward descent, but and then you can move back a tone for that bit. Then there's this kind of, as I say, this little gritty phrase, this little repeated motif where he plays. So again, the C to D flat, and then a half step bend, like that. He doesn't really bring the bend down, and goes back to the B flat. But he does the phrase twice in exactly the same rhythm, like that. So it's quite a very effective rhythmic motif in the solo. He finishes it with this little sort of bluesy thing in that classic sort of pentatonic sort of shape. So probably need to use a little bit of alternate picking there, just to kind of, it's not super fast, but just to get it clean. So that's that little phrase in full. So we're going. For phrase 2. Okay, I'll just scroll down the music. So phrase 3, it goes up to the E string. So we're going into this G here. And there's a sort of quite a wide-ish pull-off to the E flat. So it's kind of, obviously you're using the first and the third. So it's kind of a wide thing. Sorry, the fifth and the third, not the third. So again, a long slide in. Again, the same rhythmic motif, but we're going to bend this G up to A flat. Yeah. And then obviously that's a half step bend, repicked at the top, and pulled off. But it's the same rhythm again. So. And then a final slide. Again, it's probably good to go from about the G15 up to the 18. Just to kind of, you could go from further away, but it seems to make sense. So we're going. Now, I tend to change, if you slide up with your third finger, I might change fingering here. So I can do this little chromatic, which gives it, again, sort of neighbouring tones gives it, gives the line a really lyrical quality. It's really lovely. So ending on the E flat. Okay, so and then we've got another move of position, slight change of position, back to the F here, and then there's again this same slide in F sharp up to G, to give it that real quality. So we're going really lovely phrase that. Okay, so you just put that section together. We're going. Yeah, so you're sort of sliding up that string length. I'll do it one more time. Okay, that phrase is resolved with this little, which bridges the gap before we move back into the 8th position, which is kind of where we started. So there's kind of like a little kind of call and response type effect, I think, to that phrase. Again, notice the emphasis on D flat really brings out the mode. And then the final phrase is a pedal phrase. This is nice. So basically, E flat mixed lead in that position there, and he just uses a lovely little. So a little pedal point idea. So we're constantly coming back to the E flat node. Again, I use down and up, down and up, down and up. I haven't written it with a little mute, but again, depending on how much drive you're using, you might want to mute it a little bit. To give it that kind of idea. Then finally, the sort of big end phrase. The end phrase is based on E flat minor pentatonic. So it's that notion of when you've got a mixed Lydian setting, you can impose minor on top of it to make it sound really bluesy, and that's what he does here. So he starts off by going right up to the 20th fret, so that classic sort of blues line, and then essentially E flat minor pentatonic in root position at the 11th fret. So it just comes down the scale. But again, if you notice the emphasis of the rhythm, ga 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 ga, really strong sort of rhythmic sort of motif, which obviously really works with the sort of the build towards the chorus and the theme which follows is the first time you hear the theme of the song. It's a lovely little riff that comes in. So. So that's that one. He slides. That's always, I think, sometimes we tend to think when we're playing the blues, we do that. Sometimes you forget the blue note. The blues is there. That's a really nice note to slide into, and that's what he does. There's a grace note at the end. So just a really fast back to that D again. Guess what? D flat. So maintaining that rhythm. And then obviously it falls into effectively the theme at that point. Again, E flat mixed Lydian. And so on. So again, if you're thinking about sort of your positions here, You've got E flat major pentatonic there. So if you convert that to E flat mixed Lydian, it's a nice symmetrical pattern. It kind of works well. And that's that contrast. E flat minor. So again, that that classic sort of mix of major and minor, but he does that very subtly. But obviously, it's included at the point where it's at its dynamic sort of peak, and before getting into the actual theme. So I hope that was useful. I think it's a great solo to learn. No matter what your level is, I suppose you can always learn something from phrasing, approach, and I think Rick's playing is just terrific in that sense. It's well worth analysing and looking at. So as I say, please check out the website. Do download the PDF on the website as well. If you want, I'm using a Helix patch, so if you're interested in the sound I'm using, then happy to send it to you. If you get in touch, just drop me an email. That's no problem. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the lesson and enjoy sort of playing the track. It's a wicked track, and I'm a big fan of the band, and I would heartily recommend checking out lots of their other stuff and Rick's playing generally, which is amazing. All the best.